Hi, I'm Peter Brusso here with Frank Syringa. We're back in our 101 Small Business Mastermind mode. At least we're trying to get back there. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning. Good morning.
And let's do a little business here. Unfortunately, our compatriot Dick Richard Bentley, did pass here 2 weeks and a half ago. We don't have any data on that. So if people are wondering where Dick is, we don't have a Zoom to heaven yet, but we're working on it. So God bless him and his family. Terrible to see that happening. And let's talk, I'm amazed, Frank, at all the COVID-16, or I'd like to call it, or COVID-19, I like to call it C-19, and everybody working at home, they're struggling with that. Now, you've been working at home since when?
1978.
Yeah, mine's been around 2000 with a couple of stints of the military back and forth with things. But I just find it humorous that everybody's having such a hard time staying home.
It's different. When I started in 1978, I was the first remote employee for a high-tech company out of Atlanta, and I was living in the Boston area. So I did not want to move, and they didn't want to pay because they were too small to pay to have me move. So they said, you can work out of your home. Well, my home was a home. I did have a home, but I had no office space. I had 2 daughters, and I have to work out of my basement, which was not finished. So I was next to the boiler on it was a little bit more than a folding card table, and I had a telephone extension from the up in the house to down to the basement where I worked. So, but after the first couple of days, you were working. I was getting paid, and I didn't want to shortchange my employer at the time, the high-tech company. So you automatically worked, and I would take a lunch break at lunchtime. I'd come upstairs for the first time and do my lunch, and then go back downstairs within an hour. But this is different. A lot of people are home, and they're not working. So they don't feel that responsibility to perform for their employer. And that's a whole different dynamic, and we can get into that a little later on. But I had an easy mindset. Well, I was on commission, so I either produced or I didn't get paid.
Well, you don't eat, right?
I mean, that was pretty easy. But now, what is your motivation to do something when you cannot leave the home and you're not working?
That's a good point. We've already developed our source of income. We work at home. Now I sell my Defenders, obviously, and had a good run on those the other day. And then writing this book, we're going to talk about the new book I wrote, and I've got 1, 2 websites going at the same time. So I'm busier than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. And my most difficult thing was trying to read this book and videotape myself at the same time. I suck at that.
The new approach. As you have read in the first section, Just Do This, we are creating a very powerful pattern interrupt technique with emotional conditioning replacement. Sounds quite technical.
Let me tell you, that is not a natural for me. I can get up in front and talk to anybody for however long. It doesn't bother me. But boy, reading that, it's just tough. So yeah, the other thing is they're not used to having a pantry, I don't think. We live out so far, I always say me and the doves and the coyotes. We live so far out that we have a freezer, a big freezer, and a pantry, and you should be able to live off that for a month or 2. So it just hasn't been the scary thing. That the only thing that we can't seem to get a hold of is, of course, toilet paper. I just got a note from the sewer district to quit putting, not me, but people putting paper towels down the toilet, but I don't do that anyway. So it's just interesting that they haven't planned to being cut off. They didn't have any water. They didn't have all this other stuff. So being kind of a prepper type person, a mildly prepper type person. Some of my martial art guys are truly preppers, and that I'm still eating. There is 2 people that are just as generous as heck. John Quitard and his wife Sandy Quitard. They're younger, and they come over here to our compound over here and get lists of groceries for people and go into town and get them for us, which is really nice. You know, when you get above a certain age, and I'm just above 29 now, so I get a little worried about the COVID virus and with the medical challenges that I've had recently and compromised blood. I would be a dead man in 2 weeks, no matter what. So it's one of those things that matter of fact, I've been looking into making masks, and I thought, hey, a ninja mask hood is just as good as anything. So I wear it kind of sort of, you know, I can bank robber and then put it back and look like a COVID person.
Got it.
So yeah, anyway, have you had to go to the grocery store much?
Yeah, well, my wife does, because my wife is not over that age, even though I am, as you know.
Yeah,
she's younger.
She just turned 29.
Sometimes I think she did, but she no, she does all the grocery shopping. I have to argue with her, just to get it to take me along. She's very concerned about me catching it, something, and I appreciate that, because I've had some medical issues in my past, and even recently regarding my lungs. So, so she's concerned, and I love her for it. And so I'm home, except for walking the dogs. I don't leave the house.
Yeah.
And even when we walk the dogs now, where we live, my wife and I live, they just passed an ordinance, the homeowners, Gestapo, I call them, that you must wear a mask or they will ask you to go back home. No matter, even if you're walking a dog or jogging or riding, you must wear a mask. And I said, well, it's only me and the dogs. I don't walk with anybody, and that does, you know. So anyway, so
the common sense has gone out the window on a lot of these people.
As long as their intention well, I say okay, and so so we have masks, and we were.
But where did you get the masks at?
My mother-in-law found one in a drawer that she had 15 years ago, and she gave it to us.
Wasn't a bra or anything, was it?
No. So we have one mask between two of us, which means only one of us can leave the house at the time. As a matter of fact, the markets, I know you shop in our area, the markets now, including the market that you frequent, will not allow you in without a mask.
Is that a fact?
Yeah. Yeah, they stop you at the door and say, and I said, well, will they sell you one? And I said, I'll give you $4 or $5, give me a mask. No, you got to.
They're not available. Well, there's a bunch of ones you can make on the web, and
right.
I mean, I think it's not going to prevent you from getting it from somebody else that isn't wearing a mask. But if they're somebody that is not asymptomatic and is talking or whatever, you're spewing stuff out, it's going to get stuck on the fabric, you know, no matter what it is. And this is a breathable fabric. So one of the tests about masks is that you put up a lighter or a candle and blow through the mask. And if you can blow it out, it's no good, supposedly. Okay. Whatever. But there's lots of, I don't have a sewing machine, but there's lots of versions on YouTube using hot glue gun. And I certainly have a hot glue gun. But I was looking at that and thinking, well, you know, it might be kind of fun to go see what I can make from something that no one would ever think of, you know, the engineer me. You know, the red mask or the red cups you drink, the solo cups you drink beer out of, maybe one of those with some slits in it and cotton down the thing and rubber band or elastic tied around the darn thing. You look like hell, but it would be funny to shock the heck out of people.
Yeah, it would. That'd be clever. Matter of fact, we have those red cups. I'd have to think of that.
Yeah, well, I think that with the hot glue gun, you could cut up a red cup and then glue other bits and pieces up for a nose area, you know, and then stuff a handkerchief in there for that matter. And possibly, I've actually just remembered right now that I've got some elastic cord because everybody's using elastic. I'm going, I don't have any elastic, but I just remembered I got some shock cord that's elastic that might work pretty darn good at that. But anyway, the basic handkerchief and two rubber bands is what a lot of people are doing, you know. Hey, whatever. So, all right. Also, I have a lot of my guys are bitching because they are sitting home, they're bored. They've watched all the Netflix they can watch, and I said, write a book, write a short story, get the learning, get the Great Courses Plus. I still love that. You know, my God, I could spend all day in the Great Courses Plus learning to sketch, learning about quantum mechanics, quantum physics, algebra, whatever, calculus, science, botany. I mean, it's a litany of stuff to include history pieces and literature pieces, and get learning something. What the heck, you know? So anyway, all right. Anything before we leave the COVID, the C-19?
I had to call it CD-19. Yes, there's some guy used that. I said, CD. I said, then COVID-19. That seemed to be the common name. No, again, my wife, who is at work today because she works in a pharmacy, she was complaining about this time off and everything, and I said, well, this time off is really a gift. And she said, what do you mean? We can't. And I said, it's a chance for you to do something you've always wanted to do but never found time to do it. You no longer have that excuse.
Right. I've rebooted my hydroponics. I do have a funny story. I don't know that I should admit this, but that'll make it even more mysterious. Well, you know that I have this satire blog of Dr. Lee and Dr. Albert and now Dr. Jojo. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and for those that don't know what I'm talking about, there's a real famous site called theonion.com, and they're all satire. And their pattern is they start out with something that is real. It's really, truly, you know, you're a mathematician, so am I. It's math induction. You prove K, right? And then K plus 1, K plus 2, you can take them wherever you want them to go. So, and there's a military version called the duffel bag, same kind of thing. And the Onion has done so well that even the Chinese have picked up their main articles sometimes from the Onion, and is completely untrue. And so I write in that style. You know, it's fun to write like that. And lately, you know, I've been medically challenged, and so one of the things I've learned is just keep your mind busy and try to get your mind off the amount of pain you're under. And so one of those was to start writing again on the North Shore College of Knowledge blogspot.com, .blogspot.com. And Dr. Albert and Dr. Lee, they finished high school maybe, but I used them as multiple PhDs and all kinds of things for the stories. Well, anyway, long story short, they found out that the coronavirus C-19 can be transmitted through the internet, and particularly to 3D printing. So my game plan was, okay, how do I get it into an object in their house, right? And of course the 3D printing did that, supposedly, and because they had the DNA structure of the virus, and there it is, right? They printed it. And then they also learned that in fact they had a bowl of fruit near their router, and it got infected with C-19 as well. So keep your food away from your router and scrutinize those files for 3D printing. Man, I got all kinds of fun traffic off that, right? Then I backed them up into growing toilet paper out of hydroponics. How you do that? See, there's a seed at the end of each, at the end of the roll. And so I got pictures of the seed and how to grow it. And then the next rendition of that one was how to make one roll of toilet paper last a year. We won't go into that one. However, this week, I find out that in England, people are burning cell towers down that have Chinese Wi-Fi in them for fear that, in fact, the virus is coming through the internet. And they cited a couple conspiracy blogs, and guess who else?
Really?
Yeah. And it was like, and this British official said, these sites are all rubbish. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's a satirical site. It's a satire, you know. It's anyway. They're now asking Google to delist it, and those stories, not the whole site, just these stories like that, to quit people burning down cell towers. My gosh,
amazing!
It is amazing, absolutely amazing. I had one of my friends when I first put up the virus coming through the internet. He called me right away. Is this for real? No, it's not for real. come on, you know, but a lot of people just get sucked into the whole thing, which is half the fun of it, but not to the point of burning down cell towers. Thank you very much. That's silly. It truly is rubbish. It's art in itself. Any comments on that one?
No, I'm not going to touch that at all. No, no, no.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so we covered everything else.
Tell me about the book.
Okay, about the book. Let me see if I can share. Let me first see if I can get out of here and get over to where I want to share. There's the book in itself, and this is the front cover of the book. And I thought it was very powerful, and I sent it out to a lot of people. Cure PTSD today. That's a heck of a statement. Now, I got about everybody and their brother likes this except for one person. And they said, well, the gun isn't scuffed up. Obviously, he's not seen any combat because he's not dirty. He doesn't have this. And oh, for God's sakes, you know. But at any rate, and then some said they didn't like the fact that the Cure PTSD was in camo. I don't mind that so much. I wish they used a more modern camo, because what you see, this is probably well, it's digital camo that they've got. One person said, well, they don't wear helmets like that. Of course they do. Delta teams, SEAL teams all wear helmets like that. But at any rate, not to get lost apart, we got this this book cover, and we got the back cover as well. I won't go into that, but it's a really powerful set of covers. And then, so we wrote this book by accident.
Who's we?
Stephen Hunter and myself. Now, Steve's got two other books in print. One is the Whiteboard Quotes. I love that book, and he kind of did that by accident as well. The one he didn't do by accident was Look for Beauty, Find Happiness, and I really enjoy that book as well. I think that's very powerful. And this book kind of stemmed off that book, kind of leveraged itself off that. So it was back. You know, I was having all this problem in August, you know, and my PTSD would kick in. And I was diagnosed with PTSD, you know, 46 years ago, just like 3 years ago, but I had it for 46 years, right? Didn't know it. I just thought everybody was like that. My particular type of PTSD, I would go every 2 weeks and get depressed for no reason at all. And I mean, I could be having the best time of my life, making lots of money, having lots of friends, whatever. And I go into these depressions, and getting out of the depression would take about 3 days. And I don't care what you do, you know, drink, whatever, it's going to take 3 days to get out of it. So anyway, I thought, well, I tried to Look for Beauty, Find Happiness during that time, and it worked briefly, and then it just didn't have the punch that I think I needed. And Look for Beauty, Find Happiness is really based on what they call a pattern interrupt. And Anthony Robbins has talked about this for a long, long time, and has some interesting stories about pattern interrupts. And basically a pattern interrupt is like if you have an LP album. Most of us are old enough to remember when we had the big 78 or 33 RPM albums, and if you scratch one of the tracks, needle comes down and bounces over that track, and it kind of ruins the whole recording experience. And I don't think Anthony Robbins was the initiator of this particular pattern interrupt, but what he did with it was pretty astounding. He'd get somebody in that negative mode, you know, where they're crying and unpowerful, and then he would throw water on them, a glass of water, shock them, and then he said, go ahead, you were trying to tell me something. And they get into it. He'd throw another glass of water in their face, shock them out of it. Well, what's he doing? He's creating a pattern interrupt. And the third time he did this to this particular person, she goes, you know, it's not important to talk about that. He just kind of scratched that record track. So I got thinking, well, what if I could scratch that record track, but scratch it so many times, but more importantly, put in something that changed me to a whole new record, per se? Might that be of value? And so what I did was and then just drop it, let it go. And what happened was the PTSD for that particular day just seemed to fall away. It came back with a rage the next day because I was in my 3-day period cycle. Did it again and it went away. This time it never came back on the 3rd day. And about 2 weeks later, I could start to feel it come on again. I played these stories and it went away. And the more I did it, the longer it went away until it just frankly disappeared. Yeah, I have not had a PTSD event. It took about 2.5 months for it to literally go away. And I waited and I waited and I waited because I didn't set out to solve anything, but this is what occurred. And at the 4.5, 5th month of, into this thing, which would be 2.5 to 3.5 months of no PTSD, guaranteed every 2 weeks, right? Nothing. Then I experienced my first real depression, and it was so mild. I go, wow. People get upset with this. This is nothing, because PTSD, I symbolically said you have a monkey on your back and you got to get this thing off. How do you get this thing off your back? And so then I told Steve about what I did and how I kind of put together some of what he had, some of what Anthony Robbins had, and then scratched this record. And the result at the time was pretty astounding for me. For the first time in 46 years, I was PTSD free. And I basically did the whole thing in a day. I set it up, pulled the trigger. And then like our famous shampoo story about a guy, I think it was in the 20s or 30s, you know the story well, the people that are listening may not. He was hired by a shampoo company to increase their sales. So he just sat in his office looking at this, and they said, well, what are you going to do? And he goes, where do we have this bottled at? And he went to the bottler. And he says, I want to add one line to the shampoo and the instruction line. And it says, lather, wet your hair, lather, and rinse is what they said. And he added the one word, and repeat. And he doubled the sales of shampoo because they're using it twice as fast. So by using these stories, I'm hammering away. I rinsed and repeated 10 times, so to speak, of really interesting stories. One of the stories, it doesn't have to be always about you, for sure. It can be, like I say, events that make you feel good. But Steve Hunter climbed Mount Shasta when he wasn't expecting to, with an ice pick and everything else. And sometimes, and you well know, you're my medical advocate, I can hardly move. And in some cases, I just admit that my end. And I think of Steve Hunter climbing that Mount Shasta and continuing up there all the way to the peak. And I got a picture of him up there. And I said, if he can just do that by accident, so to speak, I can get up and move. Come on, get up and move. And so that's part of one of my stories. This is something that somebody else inspired me to be, which is a good thing. But basically this technique, I designed it in one day and then executed it, pulled the trigger. And so when I told Steve about this, and he says, how's this work? And so I'm telling him about it. So he tries it and he gets some result, and I sample it around a little bit, and people are getting some interesting results. And I said to Steve, I said, you know what? We need to write a book about this stuff. I said, even if we can only help 10% of people with PTSD, that would be worthwhile, even just 10%. I think the rate's going to be much higher than that, but let's just say 10%. That's good. That's a good thing. So off we went to write the thing. He wrote his sections, I wrote my sections, and we finally got it done. We got it to the editor. They edited it, and then we're going to have it up on Amazon for a Kindle download. We're going to have an audio book. We're going to end up with a video book as well. We've got a new website, which you'll see up on the screen here in a minute, cureptsdtoday.com. And I still have yet to put that all up too. But the results have been fairly interesting that we sampled things out. And we wrote one chapter specifically, if you don't read anything else, chapter number 1 says, just do this. and it encapsulates everything they've got to do. Then we combined a workbook in there so we can help them design the stories that they want, their ads, their stories, 10 of them. I suggested 10, I guess, because it's digital. I don't know. It could be less than that for some people. We don't know yet. But so it's been a very interesting ride, to say the least. And I found out something I really can't do well is read on video. Boy, it's tough. Things like this I can ad-lib all day long. A lot of people can't do what we do, but to read something, like in front of the class. Remember how hard that was when we were kids to stand up and read something?
Yeah, well, because number one, they weren't your words, number
right,
one.
and you're not familiar with them.
No, and they use words that didn't make sense to me or weren't in the right sequence.
Right.
Because of a writing style, and I used to trip up all the time.
Yeah, so I thank gosh for editing. So I've been almost 4 days of reading this book, chapter by chapter, and now I think as of this morning I'm able to start the editing process itself, video editing process. And I found out, I thought I was so smart, Frank, I'd have one software crunching the video, and I'd go over and record video under another one, and it turned out I didn't have enough speed in my computer, so when I looked back at what I read, what the hell is that? And apparently it couldn't sample the audio quick enough. So okay. I had to do those all over this morning. But
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this? Is this book strictly for military personnel who are suffering from PTSD? Which is what everybody, when you say PTSD, you think of military.
Yeah, you do. And the answer is no. We believe, and I've been in contact with a bunch of these organizations already, but it can be for police, a fire, ambulance, first responders. They see a mess of stuff that they could get traumatized. ER workers, same thing, any place. And it's interesting that, women get it a lot, actually more than men do, which was a surprising number. And I've got, let me go find that one section. Let me show you, let me read to you or show you or whatever we're going to do here about. So I had to do a lot of research, on this topic to get smart about it and see what I forgot. But it says here, in this section here is who can suffer from it, right? And the first one is the military service, like you just said. The experience of combat is a significant risk factor for the development of PTSD, as in veterans. Almost 31% of the Vietnam veterans have PTSD. 10% of the Gulf War veterans do, 11% of the veterans of Afghanistan, and 20% Iraqis. And then we have police, officers, firefighters, first responders, other healthcare professionals like I talked about, ER, photojournalists. I was taken back by this one, and war correspondents as well. And then as I got to reading more, it turned out that a lot of women carry PTSD from being molested and or worse. And children even can carry it, the PTSD, and there's a whole list of things down here of symptoms of children PTSD if they're treated horribly by their parents or some part of their family. And this goes all the way down to 6 years old, wetting the bed after learning, even after learning how to use a toilet. Number 2, during playtime, they can act out scary events. Number 3, unusually being very clingy with a parent. Number 4, being able to talk when they have been talking before, but they just stopped talking, which brings up that whole the Patriot movie with Mel Gibson in it with his little daughter that won't talk. And then avoidance of anything new to them, including a new social situation. But I was really taken back by the number. And I think, let's see if I have it down here. Excuse me for not having this all queued up for us here. here are some factors that are interesting and how increase the chances of getting PTSD is in the book. But there's also resiliency things I found too. So anyway, but the fact that women get it from being raised, in a abusive home per se, and they carry it with them and they don't even know it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a mind blower. The three types of treatment are, one is cognitive therapy, which is 20 90-minute sessions. Then there's an eye movement therapy. Then there's pharmacological therapies, drug you up. And then there's now us, a fourth option for these people. What do you have to lose? I'm going to quote Trump. What do you have to lose? If this can work for you, you're done. That's it. Finito. Nada más. And that's my hope. And almost everybody I know knows somebody that has PTSD that can read this book, and they don't have to read the whole book. Take the first chapter, read this. Now, they're going to be so interested in it, I think they're going to use the workbook section, which is right behind that. So we tried very carefully to provide tools inside the book for them to develop their 10 stories. And so I'm building a little bit of an organization because I can't be the only person running around the nation talking about this stuff. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 veterans lined up to go talk in different parts of the world about this. We're going to be talking to the VFWs, DAV. I have a police chaplain connected to a police chaplains organization. Talking to them about maybe them pushing it out for the police. Yeah, so it should have a lot of legs. It's almost one of those things that everybody eats food, and now I make food. Like the Defenders, my self-defense tool, not everybody's into self-defense. They don't care. They don't need it. But almost everybody knows somebody that has some PTSD running on them. And by the way, I'm going to go out on a limb with this one. I believe that PTSD is part of our DNA. And when we were cavemen and women, and that saber-toothed tiger comes up and it scares the bejesus out of us, we get paranoid about the smell, the end result of death, and our protective survival mechanism that exists in us goes into overtime on some of these things. It gets hypersensitive, and thus you suffer from this PTSD thing. But it's part of our DNA survival. It isn't that you just got lucky enough to catch some disease. No, it's inside all of us waiting to pop out. So all we have to do is detune that a little bit, and we're good to go. We still have the fight or flight. We still can survive, but it just doesn't have to be to this radical end.
So, excuse me, wow, my voice, excuse me, anybody who's had a traumatic experience at any age could be suffering from PTSD.
Could be, absolutely.
And most likely is suffering.
Hard to know that one. I won't go so far out on that limb, but
maybe.
It may be. Yeah. I mean, you run in, I even ran into one martial artist that during our tests, they were complaining, because I have tests 2-3 times a year, used to then. And they're 7-day tests, so they weren't getting enough food. So I went on this campaign for the next test to find out what they liked and what they didn't like. And I provided everything they didn't like and to eat. And one guy just had, we had a game, like a board game like Monopoly, and he ended up on the square of he get a chance to eat something. And his whole thing was sauerkraut. And he didn't like sauerkraut. And I guess he was forced to eat it at one time, and texture version of it, and he was going to puke on the mat. And I said, "Don't you dare puke on my mat." So he took his hat off and puked in his hat and then put it back on his head and kept on going. But I think even, when we were kids, finish your plate, right? And there was stuff on that plate you had to choke down, as silly as that may sound, those PTSD experiences can lead into life that you'll never touch anything that looks or smells anything like that, when in fact it was a misjudgment as a survival mechanism as a child, overdriven by emotion. But so there you go.
So when will this book be available?
Oh
What's the
gosh,
date?
I don't know. That's not the right answer.
Are we talking a week, a month, half a year?
Probably within a week.
7 days, really?
Yeah, well, we've been at this for a while. And we finally got the finished copy out of the editors, and that gave us the ability to have PDF right away. But we're going to get it into a Kindle format, and then, like I say, I'm reading it for, and Steve read his sections, I read my section, so we can have a video version of it, because a lot of people don't want to read. They'd like to watch. So basically, they see us, the authors, reading our sections. And I annotated some of mine. I went off script, off the reservation, so to speak, and would add some extra stuff to it, which I think is fun. You know, that's cool. Instead of just being so dry as to read one thing, you can kind of annotate, well, this is how this kind of got started. A little history lesson in there. And then I've got to finish the website. I've got, I think, 1 page up there. Gorgeous, mind you, but nonetheless, we're going to be offering workshops, live workshops. We're going to be doing live Zoom work with particular people if they want us to help them design their stories. You know, we're not psychologists. We're not, we have degrees, you know, so that's not an issue, but we're teaching them how to build the stuff we know how to build. And but we're going to have all of that, and I can see us doing guest lectures and, you know, all these various organizations, the VA even, and then the DAV and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and, you know, they can all use it. We'll have to wait and see. So we're going to have some over on Amazon, some over on our own side. Matter of fact, this podcast is going to go over on cureptsdtoday.com. And I had one of my guys, he's been with me for like 30 years, a super duper Vietnam, not Vietnam veteran, but Gulf War and all the way up to include Afghanistan. And he texts me, he says, "Hey, Sensei," that would be me. You know, I love you like a brother, and you've never steered me wrong, but you really mean you can cure PTSD in 1 day? How do you do that? And so I got him on the phone and explained to him, but I said, first off, I'll explain it to you, but you got to buy a book. I'm a capitalist. Come on. You know, otherwise, if you give something away for free, it has no value to it. You know that.
Right.
And so he got really enthused by it, and he goes, "You know what?" He said, "They're trying to do stuff like this, but in a singular mode, not like you're hammering it." And he's gone through everything cognitive. He's been in PTSD treatment for 10 years or 8 years, I think. And he got really excited over this. So we'll see what it does for him, and kind of go from there.
Okay.
So.
Well, congratulations to you and Stephen.
Well, thank you so much.
That's exciting.
Hopefully we'll be doing some more 101 Small Business Mastermind. I don't know if you've gone back to look at them, but they are very powerful. You know, I've got a bunch of people looking at them right now because we were so far ahead of our curve in our day. I don't even know what to say, you know, but there you go. And I think, by the way, Frank, when we get done with this, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to work from home as entrepreneurs and go into town. There's going to be a whole new industry, whole new industry there.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think a lot of what we've done and talked about in these 101 Small Business Masterminds are absolutely apropos to help them, particularly your twins.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
All right. No. Let's go get him.
Then in the honor of Dick, say good night, Dick.
Oh, that's right. Good night, Dick.
All right. Thanks, Frank. I'll stop recording now.